All right. Good morning. Um, did you guys have a good week off or independent study? Yeah. Okay. Um, we'll get started in chapter 5 here in just a moment. I did want to mention that we will have an additional independent study this week. So on Thursday, there's a conference that I wasn't quite sure if I was going to get approved to go to, and I found out last week that I was approved to go to that conference. So we will not have class on Thursday morning because I'm taking some students to a conference downtown. But please use that time to get ready for chapter 6 next week. Communication is one of my favorites. We are going to do some kind of in-class activities with communication. So I'm looking forward to doing that next week. And then, yeah, the other point of information I want to share with you all is that the street taco cook-off sign-up sheet is live. You can find the link on the announcements in Canvas. And let me show you where that is. Make sure I'm in the right class. Yes. All right. So the street taco cook-off, I think there's enough for 2 more teams. I think I only have 2 teams signed up right now. If you don't have a full team of 3, but you're interested in participating, um, let me know and I can maybe ask if there's other people that are willing to participate. So right now we are looking at having it be second year students. So that way you have at least finished basic skills, basic food prep. And that means that way I'll guarantee that you have your uniform and you understand the standards and whatnot. So, um, so just if you're interested in signing up for that, it is going to be on, I know it says October 1st, but that's tomorrow. It is going to be on the 25th of October, so that is a Saturday from 10:30 to 1 p.m. And so that'll be at Hotel Contessa. You don't have to worry about parking because they will provide you complimentary valet parking for those people who are participating. But here's all the information about that. So if you want to sign up, grab a team of 3 and sign up for that taco cook-off. I don't know what the prizes are this year. Last year they gave a knife, yeah, like a Japanese knife. I can't remember the name, the brand. Jeffrey. I don't think I've seen him, but I can look. I just looked yesterday, so unless he signed up recently. Okay. Okay. I'll double check. If not, then you can sign up. Bless you. All right. So I got out of the way. We have independent study on Thursday. And if you are in my 1313 class, so that's Chad, you're going to be at the conference. So, but we will have class that day for 1313. Okay. I'm coming back for that. I don't want to skip that class since we only meet on Thursdays. Nobody else in here is in that class. Oh, sorry, Bria. There you are. Yes, we will have class on Thursday, 13. Okay, cool. All right. So let me share some information. Let me pause the recording on Zoom because this really isn't that pertinent to class. All right. So, based on the Blue Kit, the quiz that we kind of just took, the activity, we're gonna kind of expand on a lot of those concepts. Um, the difference between power and authority. Who can describe the difference between power and authority? Yes, Daniel. Okay, yeah, absolutely. So power can be granted by the or power can be organizational power and personal power, not necessarily only solely on the organization. Whereas that authority is given to you by the organization, right? That um, ability to act in a specific position, that authority comes with that position. And then we ask a question about empowerment. What is empowerment? Who can give me an example of a time that you felt empowered in your job?
Well, I work as a server, so
Okay.
I don't necessarily feel like if a guest complains that I have to go to a manager to fix the problem.
Okay, can you give me a specific example of what you might do?
Like, say they don't like their food, I could offer them to remake it or give them something else without having to have the manager approve the decision that I make.
Okay, excellent. But then afterwards, then you do follow up with your manager?
Oh yeah, I let them know, hey, this happened, I did this, taking care of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a great example. Because typically, if you're going to comp something off of a check or if you're going to replace something, then obviously you might need your manager's like card to do that, right? To authorize that code or authorize that discount. Anybody else? Another example of empowerment? How you felt empowered, or maybe a time that you wish you felt empowered? Who is still confused about what empowerment is? Anybody confused about what empowerment is? We can define it a little bit better. No? Okay, Moses, give us an example. Yeah, so you can make decisions. Empowerment allows your team members, your associates, to make a decision without having necessarily to consult the management, right? And what is the benefit of empowering your employees or your associates?
Confidence in themselves.
Okay, it helps build that confidence. Good. What else? What is it for you? What does it do for you as a manager or as a leader of the organization? It frees up your time. Can you imagine if every time a guest had a problem in the restaurant, the servers had to come talk to you to go and take care of that? You would get nothing done, right? Now, in Lorena's example, where she's able to provide either correct the issue, remake the food, offer something different, right? You still want to communicate that. So empowerment does not mean that the leader is out of the loop. They still need to be in the loop. They need to know, one, because we're probably going to need them to comp or take something off the check, right? Because that's going to keep track of our inventory. We've talked about that in cost control class. But at the same time, that gives that manager an opportunity. Okay, do I need to go and visit that table? Or if Lorena says, nope, everything's great, everything's good, the manager might just swing by just for a moment, just to say, just check in and see how everything's going. All right. Or if they are still really upset, then that's when the manager can step in. Okay. But empowering our associates allows us to free up more time. And I like what you said, it builds that confidence in them. Okay. Now, when we empower our associates, we need to make sure that they understand what is an equitable replacement for the customer service error. Okay. Um, there was the main company in hospitality that is known for their empowerment. Anybody know what that company is? Nope. In hospitality, it's a hotel company, the Ritz Carlton. They are known for their ability for empowering their employees. Every employee is allowed to spend up to $1,000 to make something right for a guest. Okay, so there's an error. If a guest forgets one of the most famous stories. A guest leaves their laptop and they're at the airport. And so the associate gets their laptop, gets into the cab, goes to the airport, drops off the laptop, comes back, and that cab ride is covered by the hotel because that employee is empowered to spend that money to make something right for the guest. Okay. I heard another story that was shared with me where a guest really wanted some Dr. Pepper. And the Dr. Pepper was delayed in being delivered through room service. So the guest called and was like, "Hey, is the Dr. Pepper on its way?" They kind of were a little bit anxious, little a little bit upset that their Dr. Pepper hasn't arrived yet, which I don't understand, but whatever. Um, and so that associate took it upon themselves to send them a robe from the spa that retails for about $450, and gave that robe with a handwritten note that I'm so sorry your beverages were delayed. Please enjoy this, and while you wait in comfort, kind of a thing, right? Is $450 worth of lost retail, is that worth Dr. Pepper being late? No. Right? And so what could that associate have done? They could have just taken that Dr. Pepper themselves. Rather than waiting for room service to do it, they could have gone, got that Dr. Pepper and delivered it, hand delivered it, right? So we always need to make sure that when our associates are empowered, they understand what is equitable, what is appropriate, and what's not appropriate. Okay. If they do something that's not quite appropriate in that example, do you think that that person was fired from giving a robe? They were not. They had an opportunity to sit with their manager, and their manager said, "Okay, talk me through your process. Why did you give this to that person?" And they explained it. It's like, okay, that's great. That's a good line of thinking. However, how much is a Dr. Pepper? And now we kind of help them, right? They are $4 to $5, maybe $6. And I went to one recently, and I think this was like a Hampton Inn, and it was like $6 for a Dr. Pepper. I was like, "Woo."
My son paid $10 for a Diet Coke because we were in line on a ride and they had a vending machine while we're in line for a ride. And he just swiped his card and didn't realize it was
$10. Wow. Well, you can't get out of line to go get your Diet Coke. So, but yeah, so you want to make sure that when we are empowering people to do things, we want to make sure, A, that they are trained, and that they also understand what is appropriate, what's not appropriate. All right. So we talked about, or the quiz mentioned something about centralized versus decentralized. Okay. Very centralized organizations make decisions at the top level. All the decision making is centralized at that top level. And then once that decision is made, then it's basically shared and disseminated down to the lower levels. Okay. By decentralizing that decision making, okay, it allows for more people to be involved with the decision making process. There's pros and cons. What are some pros to decentralizing decision making? Decentralized, so letting people at all levels make decisions. What are some pros? Some good things about that? Yeah, so there's some shared responsibility with that decision making. Good. What else? It could be more efficient. It could be. Could also cause a lot of chaos, right? Because we don't really know what decisions are being made down here and how it impacts up here, right? So there are some good things and bad things about centralized and decentralized, right? And what I want you to kind of think about is that what types of decisions that need to be made lend themselves to have more decentralized, and some decisions have to be made at a centralized level and then disseminated, right? If we're going to redo our property management system or our point of sales, okay, is it good just to have a centralized decision making? Moses says no. Why? Okay, so ultimately, yes, we're going to decide at a centralized level which one we're going to do, right? But we should also involve people. We should involve the servers. Why should we involve the servers in that process? They work with it every single day, right? And so they may say, you know what? I really wish I didn't have to push 7 buttons to be able to say no mayonnaise on this sandwich. Okay. And so if they're part of that decision making process, ultimately the decision is going to be made by a top level, right? But if we can in some way involve people with that, it allows them to get input, it allows them to build confidence. And then think about it this way, at some point, hopefully, those people that are in lower levels are going to do what? They're going to move up, right? And at some point, they're going to be in those centralized decision making processes. All right, chain of command. Who is not familiar with the chain of command? Okay, cool. So, chain of command. Who is familiar with chain of command? All right, Andrew, tell us about chain of command. Exactly. So, it builds a chain, right? And so, when you have a chain of command, or in this case, on the screen, you see an organizational chart. Okay. As you go vertical, as you go up and down, that's the chain of command. Okay. As you go horizontal, those are the people that are on the same level, but maybe in a different department or a different area of that organization. But they hold kind of the same level of authority, if you will. Okay. Um, what is an issue? Where's my marker? There we go. This person right here, who do they report to? They're going to report to this person right here, right? So if they have an issue with something, or if they're going to call in sick, or they're going to call whatever, they're going to report to that person, okay? What is an issue if this person goes directly to this person? We skip the chain of command. That is an issue, okay? Does the CEO or president or general manager, do they care? I mean, yes, I'm going to say that. Yes, they care if you're not going to come in, right? But are they the person to report to that you're not coming in that day? They don't have time to listen to that, right? Um, they are focused on other things, and that's why they have their leadership team underneath them that handle that. Okay. Now, the only time that you would ever skip the chain of command is that if your concern is with this person right here, the person you directly report to. Okay. You might go to maybe somebody at their same level, or you might go to the top, right? HR, exactly. Um, so that's pretty much the only time. What is an issue? What is a concern about skipping the chain of command? What happens when you skip the chain of command? Exactly. You don't allow for that correction. You don't allow for this person right here to make a correction. And so if they don't have an opportunity to make a correction and you go directly to the head person about something that person should have been handling, what message does that send to this person? If that person either doesn't listen or they're not doing their job, right? But if you skip the chain of command, you don't give them that opportunity, right? So I had an example once. I had to teach. I had to share with a student a learning opportunity. Um, I got a phone call on a Sunday by a former student, and and they wanted to know who my contact was at a particular business. And I said no. I don't feel comfortable giving you their phone number on a Sunday. Um, and their issue was that they felt that there were not sanitation practices being followed at a food establishment. And so they wanted to talk to my person, my point of contact, who I know through the industry, um, and and they wanted to complain to that person on a Sunday. And I was like, no, we're not going to do that. You need to. What advice do you think I gave them? Well, okay, yes, wait, but who do you think I told them to report to? The customer service, the manager, right? The customer service agent or the guest services desk. Okay, not to the health department, but like so. It was at a theme park, so they were complaining about the food operations at a theme park, and the person that I work with sells tickets to the hotels, so it has nothing to do with food. But just because they work at the park, this former student thought, well, I'm just going to go talk to him because that's who I know, that's my connection. But I had to teach them. I was like, that's not the right person to go to. They have nothing to do with food service. And if you do that, if you continually skip the chain of command, you might get fired, but you develop a bad reputation. You develop the reputation of you're going to go skip my supervisor, and so maybe I'm not going to trust you that much, or maybe I'm not going to give you a job. We don't want to develop that kind of reputation, reputation, I'll say. Yes, sir. Well, so they did. Um, from what they shared with me, they said to the little kiosk worker that they told the kiosk worker they were going to kill somebody if they didn't practice better sanitation and safety. And I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna lie. If I was that kiosk worker and somebody came up to me and started berating me and telling me I'm gonna kill somebody if I'm not gonna practice good sanitation and safety, I was like, there's a way to approach that. And you raising your voice, I was like, because I could hear when they called, I was like, I could hear you're worked up. I could hear your passion. I understand that you know sanitation and safety, right? And obviously that person does too, because they're a safe food handler, they're certified. Um, but but yeah, it was just one of those moments where I had to remind we don't skip the chain of command, and you also want to report to the correct person because if you report to the wrong person, then you're wasting that person's time. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was a Sunday. I'm not gonna lie. All right, so different types of power: position, reward, and coercive. Okay. Um, power that's given to you based on the position that you hold. Okay, there is different levels. So whether you are, let's say, a front desk supervisor, a front desk agent, supervisor, um, a rooms director, general manager, AGM, whatnot, your position holds specific power. Just like Lorena's position as a server has power to maybe comp or replace something, whereas the manager's power is to comp the whole bill, right? You don't necessarily have that ability to do that, but they might decide to do that. Also, reward and coercive power, very just exactly what it sounds like. So the ability to the power to give rewards and to also give punishments. Okay. Personal power is more on what you know, your knowledge, skills, and abilities, KSAs. Okay. So that's kind of your own personal power. That's why oftentimes when I talk to students about going to school, um, you're when you're here in school, you're learning a lot of the theory behind things that maybe the average person walking off the street that's getting a job in a hotel or a restaurant maybe doesn't know. You're learning the terminology of the industry, so that helps you move up faster as you are going for those management level positions. Um, that knowledge, there's not really a lot of places in the industry that's going to give you a setup like basic food prep, where you have time to develop those skills, right? One of the biggest things that I love to read in practicum reports is the volume of business, the productivity that they are expected to do. It's a little eye opening. Okay, bakers, don't take any offense to this. Okay, but like you have to do more than like 2 dozen croissants in 6 hours. Okay, in class, you're going to learn in that really low, like that kind of slow pace, and you're going to learn the step by steps. And then once you get into the industry, okay, now you've got to make 12 dozen in 2 hours, right? Um, and you don't get an entire 6 foot working station. Okay, this goes for culinary and hospitality students too, right? When you're in 1898 downstairs in Chef 1300 and you're salad person, you have a whole 6 foot prep table, right? In the industry, you've got maybe 2 people or 3 people work on that same table, right? And so here you get to learn those skills in kind of a little bit more relaxed environment. And then when you get to the industry, you get to refine those skills. I had friends who owned a deli, and they had a student that was doing their internship. Um, and if they didn't cut the cake board, if they made a mistake cutting the cake board, they would throw it away and get a new one. It wasn't perfectly circle, right? Which is wonderful. However, they asked me, they're like, David, why does he keep doing this? And I said, oh, because in his lab, there's a whole shelf of cake boards. And if he makes a mistake, he goes and gets another one and does it. He was also kind of a very perfectionist type of a person. Um, and so I was like, so there really isn't any kind of like cost association to that. Now, I know you guys do cost things out and you put that as part of your cost. So I'm trying not to play down the situation, but um, they had to explain to him that every time you do that, that is money that's going in the trash. And if it's not perfectly circle, we're a deli. So it's okay. We're not a wedding cake that someone's paying thousands of dollars for. Yes, if they're paying thousands of dollars for a wedding cake, you want that to be part of the presentation. But we're making homemade carrot cakes, right? It can look homemade. Doesn't have to look like it came from a professional bakery. So trying to help kind of understand that. So how you adapt the skills that you have, the abilities that you have here, and then implement them into the industry. And then what does referent personal power? What does that relate to? Anybody remember? Yes, Daniel. Yeah, so basically, I mean, charisma is essentially how well you're liked. It's kind of boils down to that, how well you're liked. That's part of that personal power. Um, People typically want to work with people that they enjoy being around. Yeah, people really tend to want to work around people or work with people who that they enjoy being around. How many of you have ever been to a situation where you leave a customer service interaction, you're like, why are you in customer service? Anybody ever had that experience before? Yeah. Yesterday. So sometimes, yeah, so that might relate to their KSAs, their knowledge, skills, and abilities. Maybe they don't have maybe they haven't encountered that experience before, and so they're going by the book, right? This is what the book says I need to say or do. Um, Most of the times when I think about like as far as referent, I think about like personality wise, somebody who maybe isn't shouldn't be in a guest facing role. They may be good in like in a back of the house role. I mean, they're maybe not interacting with guests, which is one reason why I love hospitality, because there's a job for everybody. There's no matter what your personality type is, there's a job for that. As we use our power, I think it's really important to note that as we use our power that we have, whether it's organizational or whether it is personal, okay, one of three things is going to happen. People are going to be really excited to follow you and jump on board. People are going to be like, whatever, I guess I'll do it. Okay. And then you have the people who are resistant. Um, and so oftentimes that resistance is mostly associated with somebody who overuses the coercive power. Somebody who's overusing that coercive power can tend to lead to more resistance. People just don't want to follow that. People just don't want to be a part of that. Oftentimes, you'll hear that people don't quit jobs, people quit people. People quit people, meaning it's not always the case, but meaning that people don't often quit the job because they don't like the job itself. They quit the job because they don't like the people that they're working with, and they're going to go find the job somewhere else and do the same job, but just maybe in an area where they find more enjoyment. Delegation. All right. Anybody think they're an excellent delegator? I'm not very good at delegating. I'm horrible at delegating. Why are you not very good at delegating? Anybody? I know why I'm not good at it.
Oh, I don't like to tell people what to do.
Okay.
Adults, like, and we're in like, I shouldn't have to tell you how to do your job. Like, I just, I personally, I don't want, I feel like, I don't like to micromanage.
Okay.
Um, if I, if we're working, you should already know your position. Like, I shouldn't tell you how to do your job. Like,
Okay.
I don't like the manager position.
Okay.
I want to be responsible ultimately for other adults not doing their job.
Yeah. So I hear what you're saying. And so that I think leads a little bit more to training and coaching. So training is what happens when somebody first gets the job. And then after they get the job, if they're not doing their job correctly, that's when coaching comes in, right? Okay, I think I gave you all the example where I used to mess up the steak temperatures at TGI Fridays, right? And so that Kristen, my manager, working with me and giving me the neon pink index card, that's coaching, right? You've got this part down, you've got the script down, but here's one area that we still need a little bit more room. Okay, a little bit more room for growth. So that coaching area, that coaching is kind of helping people develop more fully. Delegation is slightly different in that is that you're not necessarily going to like tell someone how to do their job, but you are delegating. You're giving a task that you should be doing or you could be doing, and you're delegating that you're giving that task to another individual. Okay, so like let's say a delegation, let's say with conducting inventory. If you as a manager, want to help train your staff and you want to help kind of build their managerial skills, you may delegate the inventory taking and the ordering process to somebody else. You still probably going to sign off on it to make sure, yes, this is all correct, but the actual act of taking inventory and the actual act of placing the order, you might delegate that to somebody else. So you're basically giving that authority to somebody else to do that. Okay. So I personally don't like to delegate because I'm pretty particular in how things are, right? And I just think that nobody's going to do it as good as I am. So it takes time to delegate properly. Delegation is not just, hey, go do this. You have to sit with that person. You have to make sure they understand what the task at hand is. If they don't, and you delegate to somebody who doesn't understand, what's going to happen? It's going to get messed up, and then you have to fix it. You have to do it all over again, right? And so that delegation, it takes skills. It's not just simply, oh, here's a task, do it. It usually takes time. You want to make sure that they understand what's going on. And then you also need to have some check-in times with them as well. Okay. So if people don't have the experience in a particular role or a particular activity, they are not going to perform to the standard that it needs to be done. Okay. If they don't perform at the standard, then we want to make sure that we are, again, coaching and working with them to help develop them. We think about, again, that decentralized and that centralized. Eventually, somebody who is a cashier at McDonald's could potentially be the general manager of that store. Somebody in a hotel who's parking cars and valet could one day be the general manager. And so oftentimes we want to look to see who those people are, identify those characteristics. Are they organized? Are they a team player? Do people like working with them? Do they understand? Do they follow procedures? All those things, all those different characteristics. Do they show up on time? Are they genuinely personable to our customers and our guests? All those things we can say, okay, you know what? Let me show you what I'm doing, because I think one day you'd make a great supervisor. And so if you're open to it, let me show you what I'm doing. And then you delegate that to that person, right? And then that frees up that time for you to be what's the word I'm looking for? More time efficient, allows you to kind of oversee and help your team develop versus being that micromanager and just saying, nope, got to do this. Okay, now click this button. Okay, now do this, and send over their shoulders. That's not any way to lead or guide your team. All right, any questions about power? Okay. What's that? Yeah, so we could not necessarily going to discuss politics, but we could definitely see how these different types of powers, whether it's personal or organizational, how these different types of powers are implemented and executed. Absolutely. All right. So reminder, no class on Thursday. This Thursday, correct. Please watch, and then we will be back on schedule. No more surprises. We will be back on schedule based on our calendar for next week. We'll cover chapters 6. I think just chapter 6. Okay. There is a chapters 3 through 5 quiz on Canvas. Okay. That is due on Tuesday. So I would recommend that you use that class time from Thursday to work on that quiz. Okay. Thank you so much. I'll see you next week.